junior engineers, a young guy. Scott Thompson, president of PayPal, doesn't have a lot of time, but he has to meet him. And so he asked Shvat, so, what's your great idea? What's your, killer idea for credit card fraud? And he says, well, I was in the Israeli army. I can't do the thick Israeli accent, but I was in the Israeli army. I was in a unit. I could tell you at this moment of time. He didn't say that. And, our job was to track terrorists over the internet. So, we discovered something very simple. In the world, there are good people and there are bad people. And what we discovered is that good people, they don't care about what they're doing on the internet. They leave traces of themselves all over the place. Bad people are trying to hide. So they're using aliases, whatever. They don't leave traces. So all you have to do is you look for the traces. Good people, traces are good people. No traces bad people, and Shalom Yisrael. I don't think he said that. But, I hope not. Anyway, so Thompson is thinking to himself, okay, this is totally nuts. I can't believe Benchmark made me do this. They owe me big time. Because this is totally off the wall. Everybody knows that credit card fraud is something, you have to do these exhaustive background checks of people. It's very complicated, and, this entire industry, tens of thousands of people in all the banks, in Visa. Scott Thompson used to work in Visa for 10 years. He's like, PayPal is way ahead of Visa in the industry in terms of credit card fraud. These are the cutting edge people. They've never heard of anything like this, and it's totally nuts. But, he has to keep going with this. So he has to, okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a test. 100. First he asked him, what can you prove? What have you done? And Shvat said, well, we processed 40,000 transactions over the 5 years we've been around. And we've only made 14 mistakes. We've only gotten wrong 14 times. So Scott thinks, well, okay, this is a little interesting, but 40,000 transactions is bupkis, for PayPal. Nothing. So he thinks, okay, I'm going to get rid of this guy quick. I'm going to give him a real test. 100,000 transactions, real PayPal transactions that he knows what the results are. And he says, Shvat, I'm going to give you these transactions. We're going to have to scrub the data because, for privacy reasons, you have to take the names out. So it's going to be more difficult. You take this and see what you can do. Okay, so Thompson thinks to himself, this is the last I've seen of Shvat Shaked, because 5 years, 40,000 transactions, these 100,000 transactions. So Shvat goes home. This is a Thursday. And like 4 days later, he gets an email from Shvat. 2 words, we're done. Shvat went back to Israel. He automated his entire process. He ran through the whole process, 100,000 transactions, ready to send the data back to Scott. So he sends the data. Thompson has, he has hundreds. He may have hundreds of engineers, but he has like 50 really crack PhD engineers. And he gives the data to those guys, and they sit on it, they work on it for a week. They're not done yet, but they already have an idea that in the transactions that PayPal is having the most trouble with, fraud scientists got it right 17% more. And that's a huge delta in this business. So Scott Thompson goes running to Meg Whitman, the head of eBay, says, we can't invest, you can't tell Benchmark to invest in this company. We can't have anybody else invest in this company. We have to buy this company. And then, of course, he's in a bind because the minute if he's going to tell Shvat the results, the price is going to go way up. So he says, he's stalling. He says, okay, we're still working on the figures, and Shvat says, I'll come over, whatever. Finally he shows up, and Scott Thompson makes an offer for the company, $80 million. So a quick negotiation, they settle on about $170 million. And he talks about the the process of negotiation, which was basically Schwartz saying, you know, this is what we think the company is worth. Which, you know, either the guy had a very good poker face or a very good negotiator, or he just, you know, he really had an idea of what the company was worth and he stuck to it. In fact, the investors like Eli Barkat, people like that, even today are second guessing whether they sold too little. But that's another story. But what's great also, what also helps illustrate all the things we're saying in the book, is what happens when Scott Thompson comes to Israel on his first visit to see the company he just bought. So he's coming in. He's coming in on the airplane. You know, he's like waking up on the airplane. He's groggy, seeing the little television screen with the icon coming in, the planes coming in. There's a little map on the screen, and you can see, you know, the icon's quite close to Tel Aviv. He's about to land, and you can only see the stuff that's right close around Tel Aviv, and he sees Beirut, Damascus, Amman, Cairo, and he thinks this, oh my God, I bought a company in a war zone. So he has this mini panic attack, and but you know, he gets over that. He lands. He shows up at Frost Sciences, and he's in the parking lot, and there are 50 cars there, and every car has a PayPal bumper sticker on the car, and he's very impressed with this kind of loyalty. He doesn't see that very often. And he goes in the meeting, and you know, he speaks to an all-hands meeting. Not that many hands. I mean, it's all the junior engineers and the founders, whatever, 50 people or so. And you know, he gives his little talk, and nobody's texting, nobody's dozing off or emailing or anything. Rapt attention, and then come the questions and answers. Questions, and he starts getting questions. He's expecting questions. You know, how are we going to integrate our companies, and you know, how are we going to do this merger? And he gets all these questions about, you know, why are you doing business like this? Why are you doing it like that? What about your business model? What, you know? And, you know, I don't have to tell you, you know how it goes. And, you know, this is Scott Thompson getting the Israel treatment. And he's amazed at the level of the questions, the audacity, the fact that they could care less about, you know, hierarchy. And he, you know, begins to get nervous up there, and you start thinking, well, who bought who? I thought I bought this company. So, you know, this story, you can see all the elements of this story happen over and over again. You can see the fact that, you know, that somebody taking something they got out of the military and twisting it around, applying it in a creative way to something else. You can see the audacity, you can see the, you know, the chutzpah, you can see the culture clash. You know, Intel actually ran cross-cultural seminars to help train their American people and their Israelis. I mean, to try to span the gap between Israelis who are, you know, very frank and say what they mean, and you know, and like to argue, and the Americans who are kind of less this way, and so we use stories like this in the book to illustrate all the factors that we trying to identify that come into what we call a culture of innovation. And one of the points we're trying to make is that innovation is not just something that goes on inside companies. There must be hundreds of books about how to innovate within a company. I mean, I went through all these airports just now, and every single ad it seems in the airport is a company saying how innovative it is. And yeah, they might be, but it seems that the whole focus is on the company level. But what about the culture? And what we're saying is that Israel has something unique, and this kind of gets to the word miracle. And miracle is a funny word for a book like this, because, you know, miracle implies that you're talking about something that can't be explained. That's not what we're saying, otherwise we wouldn't have written a book. But a miracle is also something that's hard to explain. And there are elements about the Israeli story that are so amazing that it's hard to explain. Like, one is Another thing that Israelis, I don't think, appreciate fully is what happened in the early part of the state. From 1950 to 1970, the Israeli economy actually doubled in relation to the United States. Israel was 30% of U.S.